Good morning, Easter people.
Good morning.
Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed.
Wait, what does that mean exactly?
What? Easter?
No, the Easter people part. What does it mean to be an Easter people right now when our world is full of chaos and violence and fear?
Yeah, I remember last year I got an email from another pastor in our conference who signed off in the email, "May new life fill those places where you have touched death this year." And at first I thought, that's a good line. I should steal that for a sermon sometime.
Yeah, that's fair.
But then I thought, where has death touched my life this year? And then I almost had to duck because so much came rushing in, so much sickness and loss and violence and despair, nearby and far away. And I gotta say, it feels even more like that this year.
Yeah. On Good Friday, we remembered the one-time event of Jesus' crucifixion. But crucifixions happen every day. I don't know if you read the paper, listen to the radio. Every act of cruelty, of violence, of death. And resurrection is happening too, whatever we refuse to believe that the bad news is all there is. But some days it feels small.
But that's hard, good news to trust.
It is.
Because Easter doesn't make everything magically better. Easter doesn't erase the cross.
No.
The cross still happened.
But Easter says the cross doesn't get to tell the whole story. God gets to tell the whole story. And it's ultimately a story of love and life and redemption.
Yeah. And it's really hard to imagine that when things are falling apart. When, hypothetically speaking, your wife is in an induced coma. Just saying. Or when you lose your job. Or when the diagnosis is not what you'd prayed for. Or when your marriage is unraveling.
Or when every Sunday on your way to church you go by the same guy sleeping out on the bus stop.
Or when your queer neighbors are being legislated out of existence.
Or your immigrant neighbors are being disappeared. It is hard to imagine. I so value the words of Shelley Rambo, who's a theologian at Boston University School of Theology, who says that is exactly the effect of a traumatic event. The shock and the pain shut down our ability to imagine anything else. So when we've gone through that kind of event, we lose our capacity to think that a different life is even possible. To think about a different world, a world that, I don't know, runs according to the laws of love, maybe.
What a concept.
It just feels impossible.
And that is precisely why violence and cruelty are the preferred tools of control for empire. Because trauma works so well. It doesn't just harm bodies. It desiccates our ability to imagine a different reality or believe in the good of others or of ourselves. Trauma makes us cynical, no longer believing that we can bring about change for the better. Or like Pontius Pilate, we decide that there is no truth other than expediency and raw power exercised. That's what the Roman Empire was doing with crucifixion. Crucifixion wasn't just a method of execution for escaped slaves and resistance fighters. It was a bone-chilling message to everyone else. It operated like the lynching tree of the American Jim Crow South. It was a message to everyone else. This is how the world works. Power wins. Resistance is crushed. Deal with it.
So for Rome, once Jesus was crucified, he was finished, dead, buried, put in the tomb, and a stone rolled across the entrance. That was the end of the story. And for Jesus' followers, too, he was finished. For them, it was a devastating, emotional earthquake that shattered everything they believed about who Jesus could be. And 3 days later, when the women go to the tomb at dawn, I don't think they went with hope. I think they went with spices and as a final act of love, but not with hope for something surprising. And when the earthquake happened that morning, I wonder if they felt like, an earthquake too, on top of everything else? Like, how many more things are we going to have to deal with?
But then, this angel, rolling back the stone and sitting on it like a quiet act of defiance, a mic drop against the Roman Empire, the mechanisms of death. And he had a simple message. Don't be afraid, which is what angels always seem to say in the New Testament. He isn't here. He's been raised. Come and see. Go and tell. And go to Galilee. Jesus will meet you there. That's it. Short, specific, one step at a time, because that's how resurrection begins. Not all at once, but step by step of recognition, of possibility, of hope.
You know how it is when your feet get so cold they get numb? And then when you go inside and you're next to the fire or you're next to a heating unit or something, and they start to warm up again, they hurt something fierce? That's what I imagine it was like for the women at the tomb that morning. Because when you are so devastated by bad news, it almost hurts to start imagining again. You need simple step-by-step instructions, like sit here by this fire, or like go tell the disciples to go to Galilee. And that's how you start to live resurrection hope. Those simple instructions was what the angel gave them.
Here's what the angel didn't do. The angel didn't change the reality. Resurrection hope is not magic. It doesn't erase the hurt. The crucifixion still happened. The wounds in Jesus' hands and feet and side are still real. The stone wasn't erased, but it was rolled away to reveal a new future. God does not fix the past. The cross and the death and the grave are still real. But
they don't get to tell the whole story. Only God gets to tell the whole story. And God does something more wonderful than fixing the past. God has raised Jesus from the dead, and that changes everything. It doesn't change our past, but it changes our present, and it makes our future possible.
Resurrection hope means that the world we thought we understood, you know the rules. Power always wins. Death always gets the last word. Resurrection hope says that world finally, ultimately, is not true. It's just the world as we've learned to live in it. But it's not the world that God continues to create around us.
So to get back to my original question, we believe that being an Easter people is not just about believing the resurrection happened. It's about becoming a people of hope. It's about becoming people whose lives don't make any sense unless the resurrection is true, because they're full of hope.
Being an Easter people is about living as a community of love and service and justice. It's about sharing lives of courage and mercy, of truthful and resolute hope over and against the machinery of death and violence and empire. It looks like staying with those who suffer when it would be easier to turn away. It looks like loving enemies when empire tells us to destroy them. It means we don't get to be cynical anymore, because cynicism is just another way of saying that death gets to tell the whole story.
And Easter has taken that option off the table. God gets to tell the whole story. Death is part of it, but it's only part of it. Being an Easter people means being people who are committed to plant, in every sense of that word, no matter what, who plant hope and joy and connection and understanding, not because we're naive, but because we trust in God and God's life and God's love. We trust in a God who raised the dead. And that is why we gave you seed papers this morning and instructions for helping them to grow, so that we can be people, literally, who plant.
So, when you take those seed papers home, don't just think of them as a nice Easter symbol. Think of them as an Easter practice. Practice defying everything that says death and fear and violence are the end of the story, because they are not.
Practice nurturing something small and beautiful and wondrous that will grow into beauty and with joy, even as each one of you is something beautiful and wondrous that God wills to grow into beauty and joy, just like resurrection.
And just like each of you, all of us invited to become Easter people in a world that is desperate for life and love and good news. Easter people, Christ is risen.
Christ